Hi, Ferg and George. I just thought it must be about time that I read in some more books. So there's Rats by Gavin Bishop. So I'll read it and I'll try and show you the pictures. Rats. Mrs. Polly Piper had rats. They invaded her bath. I don't know if it's a very good idea. They upset her friends. And they put her off her breakfast. She pleaded with them to leave her in peace. She promised them tons of tasty tidbits if they would only go, but the rats stayed on. Then one afternoon there was a rat-a-tat-tat at the door. Rapscallion Claw at your service. Ma'am, rats are my business, rats are my game. Do come in, please, cried Miss Polly Piper. He looked in the dining room. No rats here, he said. He looked in the living room. No rats here, he said. He looked in her bedroom. No rats here, he said. Then Rapscallion Claw took out an old accordion and struck up a jig, and it was such a jiggity-jig-jig that the rats came out of hiding. They couldn't stop themselves from dancing. Rapscallion Claw flung open the door, and the rats followed him across the porch and down the steps. And they danced behind Rapscallion Claw and up the winding path into the mountains. At the top of the highest peak they came to an old cabin. This is your new home, he said. Toodaloo! And the rats danced inside. They were so hungry, but the cabin was bare. So they nibbled the walls, and they chewed the floor, and they ate the door. And when the sun went down, it got cold, very cold. And the wind blew through the trees, and it howled through the door. Snow swirled through the door, and the chattering of a million tiny teeth filled the house. Meanwhile, Mrs. Polly Piper looked in her dining room. No rats here, she said. She looked in her living room. No rats here, she said. And she looked in her bedroom. No rats here, she said, in a tiny voice. And for the first time in her life, Mrs. Polly Piper was lonely. And the next morning, Mrs. Polly Piper pulled her curtains to see what the day might bring. Let us come back, please. Mrs. Polly Piper smiled to herself. I'll think about it, she called. But if I invite you back, there'll be no nonsense, and I'll call the tune. So the rats moved back. They patched the holes and wallpapered the living room, and they put up fresh paper in the budgie's cage. And the rats treated Mrs. Polly Piper like a queen. They cooked her tasty meals, and they made her pretty dresses, and they always made sure the TV was on her favourite channel. And throughout the months and over the years, the rats stayed with Mrs. Polly Piper. Good days came and bad days went. Babies were born and old ones passed on. And at all times, Mrs. Polly Piper called the tune.